Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you out there in internet land?
How's it going, guys?
Hope you had fun hanging out with Fred.
Yeah, Fred was made for us by one of our longtime subs, referenced in our Dark Side stream from 2 weeks ago
Fred is our new silent partner here on the Port Haven
on the stream.
StreamCast. If you're familiar with Nino Star, which we can talk about Nino Star today, but
Nino Star will be relevant to today's topic for sure.
if you're familiar with Nino Star, he and Fred are good friends and they hang out a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
hope you're all doing well. We had a little bit of a different week on our channel last week. Taking a break for some stuff, and it was a holiday and stuff.
Yep.
It's peanut butter jelly time in the chat right now. Um,
Oh, hey, peanut butter. I know. I know peanut butter. Thank you
that's
for
cool.
subscribing.
That's cool. I had peanut butter sandwich for lunch. I hope you weren't friends. Um, true story. True story.
It's like when Lilo is asked to feed the fish tuna in Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
It's freaking tuna.
Oh, that's funny. But we are here today with another Port Haven streamcast in which we are both very tired.
Yeah, we are. We are both. We're gonna make it. We'll find a way to make it. It is though. It is episode 20.
Oh wow, is it really? I had not
It
realized
really
that.
is.
We've
It
been doing
really
this
is.
a long time.
It's pretty exciting. I mean, technically it's 21 if you count episode 0, but yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
think.
Thanks Peanut Butter for the subscription. Always love some new subscribers. We're supposed to have some other stream stuff that happens when we get subscribers, but I don't know why
It
why
doesn't
it
work
doesn't.
for some reason.
Oh, and Fat Batman hanging out in the chat also.
Yeah, we
Um,
got good to see you drop in. I see Voltix is there. Sarge was here. We got a lot of the regulars showing up. It's pretty cool.
But what we wanted to talk about today is a little bit different. It is Star Wars adjacent, I guess. I mean, it's Star
Yeah,
Wars
I mean it's Star Wars
related,
behind the curtain, maybe
right?
fandom related. It's definitely fandom related.
Oh, for sure. So, if you're not aware, if you didn't watch our Zero episode when we first started this, you can find it out there. But our site, Port Haven, started as, I guess, an offshoot, if you will, of
Yeah.
of StarWars.com, unofficial offshoot, as it were. So we were a community that started in the forums on StarWars.com, and then when those forums got the axe, we kind of started our own thing. But so what we thought we would do today is kind of a celebration of sorts, not to be confused with other celebrations.
With Star Wars celebration.
Yeah, but a celebration, a discussion, a reminiscing of StarWars.com. So StarWars.com is still on the internet. You can go there.
It still exists.
You can go there
It's
right
there.
now. But it is very different than it used to be. And so we thought that we would spend some time. And there's a point to this later on that ties back into Port Haven. We're going to be doing some StarWars.com reminiscing on our site coming up that we'll tell you more about later on. And then Nolan in the chat there too. So why don't we start off, Jess? When was the first time you remember like going to StarWars.com? Like, I'm sure I went a lot before I remember going, but
Right.
like, what is
I
your...
think I really started going to StarWars.com in the build up to Revenge of the Sith. So I was in terms of a lot of this, I'm kind of a late comer. But I went, my kind of super fandom of Star Wars, I was always a fan, but like my obsession really came out of Revenge of the Sith and lead up to it. So I went there, and then I realized there was a countdown clock at the time on StarWars.com, which there's a countdown clock on our site for episode 9, if
There
countdown
is.
clocks are your thing. But I just remember, like, I liked to go to the site and look at the countdown clock every day and see that the day changed. And then that's how I got kind of pulled into, there was always fun polls and like whose birthday was today, and blogs, forums, that kind of stuff. And I was kind of a lurker. I didn't really actively participate a whole lot, but I liked reading the databank because I wasn't into the expanded universe yet. So that like my first foray into the expanded universe was like reading the databank and like, who is this Mara Jade? What is this? What is KOTOR? And it's kind of how it all started.
I had actually forgotten about the databank. Is that still a thing that's on?
It's still a thing.
StarWars.com?
Yeah.
I just like it's just ingrained in my brain just to go to Wikipedia for things now.
Right, yeah.
Like even trying to remember what Star Wars fandom was like before Wikipedia, and there was like this
not as fun.
This information that was just readily available there.
Anything you could ever need.
But my story is not that different, and this is just gonna make me feel old if we're gonna start talking about how
You're
old
not
we
alone.
were when films came out. Because I was about to graduate high school when Episode 3 came out, so don't even start talking about being old, fat Batman.
I was in the summer between 8th and 9th when it came out, I think.
Yeah, that was the summer between my 11th and 12th grade years. So anyway, I joined the forums, and I guess I started going to StarWars.com in the lead up to Attack of the Clones, so just a couple of years before you did. And I remember I was immediately like drawn to the forums, and I think I got kind of plugged into that because I didn't know a whole lot of people in my small rural town that were super into Star Wars. And so like just the idea of like, hey, this is a thing. Yeah, yep. Nolan, you are correct, as confirmed as the Kenobi movie. But I really found like a community there, I guess, and it sounds weird now to talk about online communities because everyone has them and everyone has multiples of them. But in 2002, that was a different thing. And so like it's weird to me thinking about how some of the people that I know that are active on Port Haven on our forums and other stuff now that I've known longer than I've known anyone that I interact with in real life. But yeah, StarWars.com was a very different kind of place then than it is now. I mean, because now they have a lot of features. I mean, definitely there weren't like VR stuff on your apps because there weren't apps and smartphones, and there wasn't Twitter, and a lot of StarWars.com is like Twitter and integration and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's necessarily been different. But like I remember like we were talking earlier about the soundboard, which I think is still on there. And it's I think there's a feature on the app now too that's basically they probably call it something different. But it's just like
the app is where I ripped the Porg sound effect for my 2 Porg videos.
But like you could just go in and it was like just all these sound effects, and like you could like loop them and stuff. Like I don't know, you know, when
I really made my account around the time they had a video editing feature. Like there used to be a thing, I can't remember what they called it, but they used to have a thing where they had like clips from the Star Wars films, and you could edit them together and have like weird things. So like I remember I made one that was like the scene, the fly casual scene, ironically enough.
Right.
And instead of like getting away, I then cut to the shot of the one rebel fighter like crashing into the Star Destroyer, so that it looked like the Millennium Falcon like freaked out and crashed and blew up. Yeah. And you could do stuff like that. And if anyone's ever seen the video on YouTube called Darth Vader is a Jerk, that's actually somebody made that on StarWars.com. And it used to be you could only publish them on StarWars.com. It had like its own YouTube because of copyright things. But somebody ripped it, and it's just a cut of Darth Vader's helmet going up, or like Darth Vader and his like bubble. His bubble opens and he talks to, I think it's Piet, and it might not have, it was Piet or Nita, I can't remember who, but he like tries to talk, and then Vader's thing shuts. And then it opens again, he tries to, and then it shuts. And it was just really funny. But like you could just do a lot of really stupid stuff like that. It was really cool.
Yeah, and I remember too. So this is again because YouTube was like 2005, right?
Right. Yep.
Um,
So this was before the
right. But like I remember
the
when
awakening.
and I think we've talked about this at some point too. I don't remember when, but when the Star Wars fan films were a big deal, like they used to
Yes.
post some of those videos on there, and you could watch them. Um,
From
but
Adams Films. Those were great. I mean,
yeah,
if you look up, that's where Chad Vader came from. Chad Vader from Blame Society Productions is just
hmm
a hoot. Pink Five from, I can't remember the name of the guy who made those, but it was like the Valley Girl X. IG-88, The Dancing Robot, or the Star Wars Gangster Rap. Those
right,
came out of the Star Wars fan film competitions. There were some really, really good ones. Some really
right.
like intense, well-made ones too, not just funny ones.
Well, my
And
favorite one of those was the ones that was like a cops, um,
oh yeah,
like parody. It was Stormtroopers.
here's something
Um,
that'll date it. They had a parody of My Name Is Earl with Anakin Skywalker.
yep, yep. We're just dating all kind of stuff today.
So much. This has turned into a dating stream.
Yeah, not that kind of
Not that
dating
kind of.
though.
We already did that StreamCast. It
Yeah,
was episode 3.
but yeah, it's so funny to me though to think about because one of the things. So like I was on StarWars.com, um, the way that other people just find a website and stuff like that. But it was right
Mm-hmm.
around that same time. I can remember this pretty clearly too because I picked up a copy of Star Wars Insider magazine like at the
Mm-hmm.
bookstore or something. And I remember the copy that it was because it was the issue that was the 7 forms of lightsaber combat that are
Yes.
like canonized now because they were first in that issue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and when I bought that issue, I subscribed to the magazine for a while because you got a lot of like swag for
Mm-hmm.
subscribing to the magazine. But when you subscribe to the magazine, you were also subscribing to their online service, which was Hyperspace. So like you'd get
Yep.
a patch every year that was Bantha Tracks, which is where the name Fantha Tracks is a spin all that because Bantha Tracks used to be like
Yep.
the
If you've
name of
seen
the
Fantha
club.
Tracks online,
Yeah,
it's another. They're a very well-known Star Wars podcast.
right. And like you would get like I have so much just random like swag that they would just mail you for
Right.
because you were joining the official Star Wars fan clubs because that's what it was.
Back when there were like official fan clubs for things.
Yep.
I
And
was in. This is how bad it was because I was a '90s kid. I was in the official Beanie Babies fan club.
oh wow, that's a thing you
Mm-hmm.
just said out loud.
It's a thing I just said out loud. You got a special bear only if you join the club.
Do you still have your bear? Because now this is
I
all I want
do.
to talk
I have
about
all of my Beanie
the
Babies
next
in
40
my
minutes.
closet.
Um, but
If you guys are real good, one day we'll just do a stream that's just me showing off my Beanie Baby collection.
there you go. That'll be our 500 subscriber special.
Special.
So tell all your friends.
So if you want to see that, get us to 500 subs.
We'll throw a Furby in there too, just for old time's sake.
I have
Oh.
Furbies right there.
But so this hyperspace membership came along with joining the fan club and subscribing to the magazine, and it was only like $15 a month, so it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
really expensive. But this is what really kind of solidified me staying and going to StarWars.com a lot. Because well, if you're a member of the forums at the time, hyperspace membership meant you could have an avatar, which was cool. Noland is super surprisingly into Beanie Babies too. This is making me rethink like my entire life. Um, but um, but so you could get an avatar on your name on the forums, and there were hyperspace exclusive forums, which like
Mm-hmm.
nobody ever posted in because that was kind of lame. Um,
Right.
but the best thing about being a hyperspace member, especially in the lead up to episode 3, they did a little bit of this before episode 2, but especially
Mhm.
leading up to episode 3, is they had webcams, which
Mhm.
again, in like 2004, 2005, the idea of a webcam is that you could get on the internet and watch a thing
Yeah.
live was still pretty spectacular. 15 years later, who cares?
Right.
Um, but they had these
Ooh.
webcams that they would put on the set, and it was mostly, you just see props getting moved around, and you wouldn't know what was what. But occasionally, like, you would see stuff that would be like a big deal. Like, I remember seeing, I guess it was the chair on Grievous's ship that Palpatine is like chained to, or like
Yeah.
electrically chained to, or whatever, at the beginning of Episode 3. And like, you just see this shot, and it looks exactly like the Emperor's chair from the second Death Star. Like, I remember seeing that on those webcams, and we would just spend like, or I don't know, I would spend like whole summers just watching these webcams, like just trying to get these little bitty glimpses of stuff that was going on set. But yeah, that was the big benefit of hyperspace was
Yeah.
for those webcams. But you also, like I said, you got an avatar too, so that was cool.
Well, I remember towards the end of the site, they opened up avatars to everyone.
They did. Because really, so hyperspace eventually went away because they restructured their forums, and they did away with hyperspace forums, and then there weren't going to be any more movies, and so there were no more like webcam exclusives. But you still had access to the blogs, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yep.
For a while too, with hyperspace membership, you still had access to those. And eventually, at some point, a couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years before the forums shut down altogether, they separated hyperspace membership and the
An insider.
Yeah, and the insider subscription, to where you could just subscribe to hyperspace for like $5 a month. So it's like early Patreon. you got to have an avatar on your thing. Yeah.
Well, and there were a lot of things on the site that they really don't keep up now, and I wonder if it's just not with the new brand. I wonder if it's just because with social media there's less of a need for it. But I remember they used to have polls, and the polls always made me laugh. Like, that's how I first learned that there was like this pseudo Annie Hall rivalry that I don't think really exists, but maybe existed at the time or whatever. But I remember seeing a poll that's like, have you seen Annie Hall?
Yeah.
And it was like, yes, no, and never. And I was like, this is weird, because I'd never even heard of Annie Hall. And then I looked up the movie, and I realized, oh, okay, like this is the movie that won the only, because in 1977 the first Star Wars movie was nominated for Best Picture. It was the only Star Wars movie ever to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, and Annie Hall won that year. But then they had other ones that were really funny, because it was going into Revenge of the Sith.
Right.
And they had a poll that was like, what do you think of Chancellor Palpatine? And it was like, good guy, he's a politician, or you're kidding, right? And it was like these really cutesy polls that were really funny. But now you can do those on Twitter so easily.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite thing was always communications disruption, which was a caption contest.
Right.
And I think my captions got on there a couple of times. I was pretty proud. But it would just be, they would post like a really weird photo, and then people would submit what they wanted the caption to be. And it was like, it would go up on like Tuesdays, and like Thursdays it would publish or something like that.
Right.
And some of the best Star Wars pictures on the internet we have came out of communications disruptions. Because there's some really weird ones that were just like super weird production styles. But like, there's one of Samuel L. Jackson like standing inside of the pod racing set. That's pretty good. But I that was a feature I always really liked.
Yeah, it's weird too, because I've done this a couple of times, not recently, but you can go to and now I'm blanking on the name of that website, like the archive website where you can see the way the internet used to look. The Wayback Machine, that's what it is. And you can go to like StarWars.com, and you can go to the forums and stuff there and see how a lot of this stuff used to look like. And it's very, I'm against nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. And I could talk about that for half an hour. But
we might do that one day.
Yeah, we'll just have a pure rant about nostalgia. but like it was so formative for me in terms of like the way I learned to interact with people on the internet, because of StarWars.com.
Mhm.
Because like I said, this was before Facebook. This is before even MySpace when I found the forums on StarWars.com. So like before there was social media, there was StarWars.com for me. Um,
Mhm.
and it really, like, it sounds cheesy to put it this way, but like a lot of like what I think about interacting with people and like internet etiquette, all exist in my mind because of the norms that were on StarWars.com and the way we interacted with people and just the simple stuff, and this was even a precursor to Twitter, but just the idea that Lucasfilm employees were not just behind the website, but would interact with the fans on the
Yeah.
forums. Like, you can tweet at Pablo now and he'll respond, or, Leland's the keeper of
Yep.
the holocron
Holocron.
who used to do the databank stuff that you were talking about.
Yep.
And I guess maybe he still does. But like even with the databank, I remember at certain times they would let you submit possible articles.
Yes.
Like they would give you like a
I
weird
remember
thing.
that. It was like a who's this? I can't remember what was the name of the competition. Oh, frick. I used to know. It had a really clever title. But yeah, I remember I used to love reading those, and there was like somebody wrote an article for like the priest that married Anakin and Padme.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but Moose, our pal the Dark Moose over at Port Haven, got one of those published one time. So he if you look up the Dark Moose on Wikipedia, he shows up because he wrote a thing that's like canon in Star Wars now.
Which is pretty cool.
Or at least it used to be. I don't know I don't know the canonicity of databank articles from 2005 anymore. But,
Right. Oh man. But yeah, but they used to have authors on there. I remember Karen Travis was on there.
Oh yeah.
They used to have
infamously.
Pretty infamously. Sue Rastoni, who was the then head editor of Star Wars books.
Right.
Was there. I remember I actually talked to her for my like 1 year that I was on the forums there. There's a Star Wars novel called Darth Plagueis, as in Darth Plagueis the Wise, and that was a book that was on again and off again for a while, and it was announced around the time of Revenge of the Sith, and then canceled, and then re-announced again. And I think it was canceled not out of lack of interest, but out of they didn't know what they wanted to be canon, I think.
Right.
And when it came back, no one knew what it was going to be called. And I distinctly remember Sue Rastoni talking to us all on the forums, and all of us just giving like fake names for the book title. And I remember, I think I said, because Darth Plagueis is a moon, Muun. So I believe I submitted Blue Moon as a title. And she actually responded to me, and that was like my first kind of pseudo celebrity interaction, and I felt cool.
Right. I mean, but even, for me, like even with like Pablo or Leland, like these people that I'm like, I'm talking to a guy that talks to George Lucas like every day. Like that was like George Lucas. Well, there was always a rumor too that George Lucas had an account on the forums, and we spent copious amounts of time trying to figure out which account was the secret George Lucas account. But yeah, and it's so, in a way, we always talk about our forums over on Port Haven, and I still enjoy that, and there's still a lot of good discussion there. And if you're not a member, we would encourage you to stop by because we talk about all sorts of things there. But it's such a moment like on the internet that just doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And maybe StarWars.com was prescient in deleting their forums and sort of focusing on Facebook first, and now Twitter is kind of their main kind of way of reaching out to fans, because that's just how the internet has has gone, and with YouTube now and the Star Wars show and things like that. But it was such a way to foster a community, and they bought into it early on, because the forum started in 99, and there were some people that were members on there since early on. But it's just, I don't know, it's such a bygone kind of moment for the internet, that hasn't, as much as I enjoy talking to people on Twitter, and even doing stuff like this would not have been possible then. There's just something about it it's not the same,
Well, what it comes down to, and I think what makes forums strong, I think, is what's also kind of causing them to die right now.
Yeah.
Which is the point of social media, is instantaneous communication, but it's also kind of this almost like Snapchat theory, right? Like you do something and then it goes away.
Right.
Or like, yeah, your tweets exist forever, and you'll find people who will pull old tweets out from who knows where, but you have to go looking for it.
Yeah. Old tweets with mugs.
With mugs, for example. And that we're not going to touch it. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But that happened. That's a thing that happened. If you know what that is. And anyway, but with forums, it was not instantaneous. And as sad as it sounds, it was not instantaneous because you still had to hit a send button, right? Like you still had to like type out this long form message and like go to it. It wasn't like all condensed. You had to like go into the proper thread to find the proper communication. And then it was there forever. You know, sometimes on Port Haven, because we don't have a necromancing rule where there's some forums where like if no one posts in a thread for a month, it gets locked and then you get yelled at if you post in something that's old or whatever, which I've always thought was stupid and we've never done. But somebody will pop in and post in a really old thread and I'm like, holy crap. And I see like people I haven't heard from in years that and like see their threads, but it's just there forever. And I think we're in a society right now that's I want it right now and then I want it to go away right after.
Right.
And forums don't represent that at all, but I think they're so much better for conversation because it does force you to form like a cogent thought,
right,
in whatever you're discussing, or you can just play the word association game.
And it allows too for, you know, there are some people on our forums right now, if you come and get to know us, who still like to post the 4,000 word articles on things.
They won't write an article for us.
but it allows for more in-depth and thought-out discussion so that you can have a complex thought and you can respond to a complex thought with a complex thought, and you can't do that in 140 or 280 characters. Or, you know, and you can't do that in a picture on Instagram or something like that. And so, I mean, it's very much a bygone part of the internet. You know, it sounds weird because we're just talking about the social internet in general, but it's really something lacking. And I think you can track, you know, this is not necessarily causal, but you can track changes in Star Wars online fandom to how the internet itself has changed. And I think StarWars.com is an example kind of that.
Well, when it was certainly easier. It's certainly easier on a forum to lock down somebody who's not a productive poster, shall we say, than it is on Twitter. Just because, and I mean, part of that is because we're such a. I mean, all sites are small. Like even TOS, or sorry, the old site. Back in the day, as big as it was and as active as it could have been. And, you know, it was a thing where if you tried to post, 3 pages would go by where you're trying to post. But even then, it was centralized. You know, everyone there wants to talk about Star Wars, and it's like a specific thing. And then Lucasfilm had the right, or Lucas Online had the right to just ban someone if they didn't like them. Twitter is so much more difficult because basically what you have is every interest group in the entire world all on one site, and you have to somehow find each other. And like this notion of followers is so different because on a forum, you don't have followers. The forum has followers, and then everyone, if you're there, you kind of get equal amounts of of FaceTime as anyone else. It's not somebody has to know you're there in order to hear you.
Right.
And it in that way it was a little bit easy. It's a little bit easier to regulate. But then you're only going to have the people who find their way there. So
right.
And I don't mean to bash. I'm certainly not trying to bash on Twitter. I think there's some really amazing things with it. It's just different tools for different things. And I think it's sad that the rise of one tool has led to the downfall of another, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and it's interesting to me too, because I feel like even if we just mean like technically in terms of like, movie production, I feel like Star Wars has always been on the front end of new technological things. And so like I feel like they leaned into Twitter and Facebook sooner than other things did. And you're right. I don't think these things are inherently bad, to be sure. We've as Port Haven, we've met a lot of good Star Wars friends, some of whom may be watching right now. But it's a very different type of thing. And I remember too, and I guess this kind of gets to what you're saying about forums too, because Twitter is so general and you can find Star Wars people on Twitter, but because there was a forum, like it was different because you knew that everybody there had Star Wars in common. You knew everybody there had some kind of shared interest that kind of connected you and made you feel a part of the same community in a way that you just don't get by being mutual subscriber or mutual people with a Twitter account or people that just happen to be on Facebook at the same time. Like I remember when I first joined the boards, I don't know if you ever went to any of these places, but they were like regional specific parts of the boards.
But they were so dead by the time I joined the forums. There wasn't a whole lot going on there.
The one of them that lasted was the Australian one. Like if you ever like, I know a lot of people, like the people I know.
They were the only ones awake when they were around.
And it was mostly to talk about Australian rules football, but like just knowing that you had that in common, like it was just a connection. And maybe it was because I was like 15 at the time, or maybe it was because, like I said, it was my first internet community. But I think, I'm 30 now, and I've not even thought about it in this way. But I'm 30 now, and I've known people from the Star Wars boards and from StarWars.com for more than half my life. Like that's... some of these people we talk to every day on Twitter and Snapchat and those types of things now. But I don't know, it's just, it sounds weird to try to explain it to people because it sounds so like quaint now on the one sense and so like silly on the other hand. But I don't know. Maybe it's something that I can't articulate to, especially to people who are
it's crazy because I've known... some of my best friends in the world right now are people I met in college, and I've known you longer than them.
Yeah.
My first memory of the Django, well, I don't even remember what the numbers were at the end of your name, but it was like Django something.
Yeah.
My first memory was you posted wedding photos on the boards.
Oh, really?
It was like the very first thing I saw. Like, oh, that's cool. That guy just got married, like, first memory.
Yeah, it was 2787 for my birthday.
There you go.
But, yeah, and just, even just to think, like, Django 2787 was my first ever internet username. Like, that was the first time I signed up for an account that, like, gave me a name I could use with it. And because I was a hyperspace member, I had a StarWars.com email address. I was Django2787 at StarWars.com. Like,
that's awesome.
It was awesome. Like, that was the email address that I used when I signed up for stuff in 2002 was, hey, I have an official StarWars.com email address. I haven't thought about that in a long time either.
That's crazy. That's funny. And now you have a Port Haven email address.
Yeah, that I still haven't activated. If I'm being honest, don't tell Moose.
I've used mine once.
But even like thinking, so I don't know if you know this, but when the boards were still active, I only know this because Moose has told me about it. But like they used to send like special Star Wars Christmas presents to all the moderators on the forums every year.
Oh, that's cool.
And so like they all have, like limited edition Christmas ornaments and stuff like that there literally are like 40 of in the world because they made them for their site staff and stuff like that. Like, and that's just
cool.
That's a level of fan interaction that you just don't get today, And it's
Well, and like I said, I was on StarWars.com for a lot longer than I was on the boards. I joined the boards very, very late. I think it was less than a year before they shut down when I eventually started posting.
It was 2011 when they closed.
I joined in the lead up to the Clone Wars cartoon because I always kind of knew people who would talk about the movies with me, and I wasn't a huge Expanded Universe fan before Revenge of the Sith. Just because I didn't even know where to get started, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna ride it out. I'm gonna see Revenge of the Sith, and then I'll get into it. But then when Clone Wars started coming out, I didn't know like anyone else who was remotely interested in it. So that's why I eventually went to the forums and like talked to internet people for the first time. I was very nervous about talking to internet people. Because we've all heard the stalker horror stories, and it's like, will that be me? Could be. I'm very
Now we're all internet people.
Now we're all internet people.
Like if you told me in 2002 that I would be messaging someone in South Africa yesterday about World Cup games, like that like that's just crazy to me. Like that's just ridiculous.
Oh my gosh! It's the Dark Moose.
Is it really? Oh. Sorry if you heard the last couple of minutes of what we've been talking about.
If you didn't hear it, you don't need to go back and listen. It's fine.
You've been name dropped for the last 40 minutes, like over and over and over.
What's great is the Dark Moose has an Urban Dictionary entry.
What's great is I gotta find this now. Moose is gonna hate this.
Yes, no, I know exactly what you're gonna get, and it's so good.
There's a YouTube video. Let me see if
Did you ever figure out who did this? Like who caused this to happen?
I never did.
Because we all thought it was Jay for a long time. He knows what it is too. Yes, Moose.
Jay kind of like took credit for it for a while, like not like said, but like
let people think it.
Yeah. All right, I'm about to drop this in the chat, and you all go watch this video, which hasn't been relevant for 10 years.
So good. It's so worth it.
Yep, there's the video link. So go.
Oh, I'm grabbing that link for later.
But I don't know, and it's difficult for me honestly to separate like old school StarWars.com from the boards. Like because it was so like I first remember going to the site and doing stuff on the site like the same day or the same week that I signed up for the forum. So it was all like part and parcel to that for me. Yes, Sarge, I was talking about you. Sarge was messaging me yesterday about a World Cup game, and it took me a few minutes. I'm like, are you watching this game that happened like several days ago? And it turns out she was, and I made sure I didn't spoil it for her. But
that's funny.
but I don't know, like, it was just such, I keep saying this, but it was like just such a moment for the internet. Like that's just how the internet was then, and in so many ways, StarWars.com was my introduction to the internet.
No, and I think so too. 'Cause when I started visiting it, which was before I went to the forums, I was just like, I just remember it being this thing of like, everything has an official site. So I was like, the Star Wars official site. And I was like, the Jurassic Park official site,
Right.
the Cartoon Network official site, and Disney.com, and like I went to all of the sites, and it was so cool because everything had a website.
Right.
It was so exciting. But with about 15 minutes left, I would say the first thing I really got into on StarWars.com is probably really the thing we really wanted to start talking about today anyway, which was the blogs.
Oh yeah, the blogs. So if you were a member of Hyperspace, we talked about Hyperspace, that meant that you could host your own kind of blog on StarWars.com too. So like every Hyperspace member could submit, basically their own blogs, which that was a new thing back then too, because like WordPress and Blogger and stuff like that, weren't like a thing either. So like to host this on your own was a big deal. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, or I guess make an announcement of, is that we have gotten together with some of our old pals from the StarWars.com, from the old school days, and we're going to start rehosting some of those blogs on our site. So if you were a fan of those Hyperspace blogs back in the day and want to reminisce, or if this is the first time you've ever heard about this stuff and you want to sit and read some of these things, some of which were very funny, by the way.
There was some, especially Moose's, to be honest. I have a distinct memory of one he wrote where he was running for like leader of the universe. And it was something about how like everyone would have to wear flip-flops. I don't remember anything else. I just remember that. And I thought it was really funny.
Yeah. And we've already published a couple of Moose's old blogs.
Yeah.
On our site back in the day when we first started up our own blog site, when we wanted to be an internet magazine, because those were a thing that existed at one point in time too. Nolan, do you know that video? Like, is that a thing that you know? I'd be surprised.
No, I think he probably just left and watched it and came back.
Oh. Like, I would be surprised if you knew about that. But we've reached out to some of our friends from Still a Standing Command. Got to wear those flip-flops. I'm wearing flip-flop house shoes right now. Does that count?
I'm wearing no shoes.
Ooh, rebel. Rebel. You're like Jen Erso. You rebel.
I rebel.
We'll cut that in post just like they did for Rogue One.
Right, yeah.
But
the most important, like, iconic line in the movie isn't in the movie.
But we're going to start posting some of those on our blog site too, as a way of connecting to some old friends from Star Wars internet gone by, and kind of reminiscing about, there's so much stuff going on in Star Wars fandom online right now that frankly, as much as I hate nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, I don't know, there's just something about it. It's special. Star Wars online fandom has always been special to me. I wouldn't be doing this right now if it weren't for StarWars.com.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And
those blogs really helped me grow my fandom, because at that point, I always liked movies, but I never had been around like a culture of talking about themes in movies.
Right.
And there's one blogger, and I do not think I've encountered this blogger on Twitter, but if I have encountered you and you are somehow watching this, or you somehow ever find this, I think my favorite TOS blogger was Dark Lord Zor. I don't know if anyone ever read his stuff, but he had like an amazing series on Palpatine, and like breaking down how Palpatine's plan came from the Phantom Menace all the way through to Revenge of the Sith. He had some great blogs on Anakin, and like how it's so passed over in the prequel trilogy, probably because it's an uncomfortable topic, that Anakin Skywalker was a slave, and that so much of his character makes so much more sense if you remember he was a slave.
Sure.
Because he comes off as the arrogant, privileged kid, which in Attack of the Clones, he had spent the last 10 years being a privileged kid. He was a Jedi. But the first 10 years of his life, he was property. And to feel the elation of freedom, only to be in this exceptionally dogmatic society where he was free, but he wasn't. And none of that is my own ideas. This is something I read as a 15-year-old that has stuck with me until being 27, because it just blew my mind to listen or to read someone talk about Star Wars in this way. If I ever met that person, I'd say this is all your fault, because it's probably the person that made me get into Star Wars like this.
I mean, and one of the things I'm excited about with these blogs is, honestly, in my mind, there was a separation between the forums and the blogs, and I never read, I read the blogs of people that I knew from the forums. And so I read a lot of Dark Moose's blogs, not that he knew who I was before Port Haven became a thing, but because I was a good boy and I flew under the radar. But so I'm excited to get to read some of this, honestly, for the first time, to get to see some of these things. But that's something you can be looking forward to on our blog site starting soon. We're going to be having our own hyperspace reunion, as it were. We're going to abbreviate that #HS reunion, and we realized that high school reunions also exist.
I mean, it'll feel like a high school reunion, I guess.
I'm just excited. This is a complete tangent, but that in another 5 years, Disney's going to start making high school reunion movies from High School Musical. Anyway, that's a different thing. But
High School Reunion, the musical.
Moose, if you could hack into the YouTube servers to remove that video, you would have done it a long time ago.
That's true.
But so while we've been talking about community, if you're not already, and I know we say this every week, Port Haven is not just Jess and I on a YouTube channel or running a Twitter account. It's not just us sharing stuff on Facebook. We are, and we have always been, a community. And I think that's another good thing about getting back to posting some of these blogs, is because we want people to participate. So if you want a place to come talk about Star Wars, or frankly anything else, you should really check out our forums. There are a lot of really conscientious people that you might like to get to know. And if you're not going to do that, follow us on Twitter. We're on Twitter a lot. You can like our Facebook page and stuff like that. We want to be a community. And if you have Star Wars thoughts, so I know some of you, you watch this stuff and you come to our streams just because you're friends of the channel more than you're sort of big Star Wars nerds. But if you ever just have that one day where you got something to say about Star Wars, let us know, and we'll let you write a thing for our site. We're not
absolutely.
The pay isn't great, but we'll let you post stuff. We're excited to be a part of the Star Wars fandom, and we want you to be a part of what's going on at Port Haven as well.
Yeah, and for me, part of why I kind of want to talk about all this is if you're kind of just in our little sphere, you might not realize this, but if you are following Star Wars YouTube at all or Star Wars Twitter at all, you would know there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of kind of toxicity going around. And I think part of that is because the internet community has gotten so big. Like we've said, everybody at Twitter has everybody. And then there's the Star Wars group, and then people kind of have to deal with the Star Wars group, and it gets so hard to manage. And I think that it's possible. It's not the only reason, but one of the reasons why things have gotten so tense is we don't know each other anymore. Right. And I can even say that right on Port Haven. We used to have our spats on Port Haven, just like any other spat, and they were never as bad as they were on other forums. But we had our days, and then we eventually all started doing video chats with each other, and once we kind of got to really know each other, and not just know each other as, the Republican, the Democrat, the religious person, the whatever that we had whatever problem with, it got better, and we really started communicating in this very different way. And I think the problem with Twitter is you're a profile picture that's probably not even you, and like 100-word explanation of who you are, and then a bunch of hashtags, and no one really knows each other. There's people I talk to on Twitter every day. I really don't know a thing about them.
Right.
And I think, we really want to be a like Django said, we really want to be a community. We really do want to get to know people and hear your Star Wars thoughts. And I think that is a way we can start to fix this toxicity problem, is if we're not anonymous people and we're just people,
Right. And I think, I don't really have anything else to add to that, honestly, because I think you just said it so well, because I feel like, in my mind, at least as an aspiration, that's what makes Port Haven different. At least to me, and that's what made StarWars.com different to me. Because like I think about some of my first Facebook friends were people I met on StarWars.com. The people I used to chat with on AOL Instant Messenger when AIM was a thing were people I knew from StarWars.com. Some of my first Twitter followers are people I knew from StarWars.com. Like, it has followed me. Some of the people I talk to every day are people I met on StarWars.com, and it's just such a important part. And I think there's something special about it that the internet can learn a lesson from.
I think so too.
And as Moose points out, if you ever want to write for us, we don't mind helping you do graphics and stuff. We're pretty agreeable people. Well, we'll toss you over to Fred, and Fred will give you some cookies.
Fred the Jovial Sith.
We'll hook you up. But I think
no, Steven, I'm never going to open the Cheez-Its.
Nope.
At this point, I probably shouldn't. Let's examine. Let's see if there's an expiration date on these Cheez-Its. October 26th of 2016. I'm probably not going to eat them. I'm just to be honest. If you ever wondered, though, it's BB-8 on the other side. I totally bought it because of the Kylo, though.
I did never know that. Now my life is changed. But I think that's just about going to do it for us today, guys. We will tell you that because of some schedule reasons, there's a almost certainty that we are going to change the day of our StreamCast from Thursday to Tuesday, probably starting next week. So make sure you are connected to us, particularly on Twitter, for those notifications. Also, if you're not already, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell, and you'll get that stuff on your phone. Get notified when we go live and things like that. I also
try really hard to schedule the streams. It doesn't always happen, but I try really hard to do that ahead of time.
But just some live stuff changing over the summer a little bit, so we'll probably adjust our schedule, and then we'll have to adjust it again probably in the fall. But thanks for hanging out with us today, and we will see you next week.
Bye.